Numbers for today continue to show that there is a diminution in the incidence of COVID-19 here in Westchester County, and it marries with the discussions that we're hearing from the governor on behalf of the state as the whole. Our numbers show that as of today, Thursday, the 23rd of April, there are 25,959 total positives. However, because of those number of people who tested positive who have gone through their 2-week period of time, we now have 8,955 active cases. That is the first time we've dipped below 9,000 cases in a couple of weeks. And that's a steady decline. On Monday of this week, we were over 10,000 cases. So we've had a 10% drop in the number of active cases over the course of these 3 days. That is considered good news. We have hospitalized as of today 990 people in our Westchester hospitals who are there, Westchester residents suffering from COVID. Just a short while ago, a couple of weeks ago, we were at 1,100, and now that we're under 1,000, we hope that number will continue to drop. We still hover at about 11% hospitalization number, which again is still a workable number given what we know. Unfortunately, the number of deaths continue to rise. We lost 25 people overnight. We now have 863 deaths in Westchester County attributable to the COVID virus. That's a 3.3% fatality rate, which is a serious number. It's certainly higher than the flu would be in a given year, and sort of normal contagious diseases. This is worse. The number of people who died last night were 25, and that the nightly number is down from 33 2 days ago to 29 to 25, but the deaths, of course, accumulate. And we are now within range of 900 people who have died from the COVID virus. Many of the people who are hospitalized, of the 990 people, will recover and go home, but some number of them won't make it. And it's a sobering number to deal with. We have tested 78,881 people in Westchester County. That continues to set the pace per capita around the state. And that shows, again, that our ratio is about 1 out of every 3 people test positive, 2 out of every 3 people test negative. But again, the number is 25,959 positive tests, active cases, 8,955, 990 people hospitalized, 863 people are deceased. And as we look forward to the continued dropping of this, we hope that this trend will continue over the next few days and weeks. We hope to lose much less people. We'd hope we'd have a night when nobody passed away, and we would continue to have a drop in the number of COVID cases. And we'll see how it plays out as the days go forward. There are a number of testing sites now that have been added to the original few sites. We hope that the testing will show that what number of people are positive can be identified and isolated, and then those number of people who have come off of isolation and resume functioning in society will be able to do so on a healthy basis. In other general comments, we want to send our best wishes to all of our Muslim brothers and sisters across Westchester County. Tonight at sundown, they will embark on the holy month of Ramadan. It's a month of fasting, a month of prayer, and a month of contemplation. We have already saluted both the Christian Lenten period and Easter and the Jewish period of Passover that happened earlier this month. And so now we extend the same good wishes to our Muslim brothers and sisters. As with our Christian and Jewish brothers and sisters, it's very difficult to celebrate a major important holiday in the wake of the coronavirus. We are prohibited from gathering in groups larger than 50 by law, and by prudence, even smaller groups than that. But our faith, and in this case, our friends of the Muslim faith, hopefully will be able to pray at home and connect with their faith tradition, find that inner peace that we all seek in our various religious traditions, and that they will have a holy and a faithful month of Ramadan. And the fasting exists all throughout the day, and that is a tough standard to reach. Every religion has their own traditions, and we hope our Muslim brothers and sisters do have a wonderful and a blessed Ramadan. As we mentioned that, we'll also continue to mention the Census 2020 is there. If you haven't filed online, I'm sure you've heard me say this 100 times. It takes less than 10 minutes to do it online, my2020census.com. And by now you should have received a mail census that you can fill out and mail back. We'll share some statistics probably tomorrow as to how well we're doing in those different projects. And that will give us some indication of how much further we have to go. The census deadline has been extended till October 31st. We announced yesterday that we were presenting a plan for taxpayer relief due to coronavirus. We have the approval of the Board of Legislators and most of our municipal officials. And while we'll probably have a formal announcement on Monday in time for the April 30th deadline, those residents of towns and cities which municipalities opt into the program that we're presenting will be able, by attesting that they have an economic impact, will be able to forestall paying their county property taxes from the due date of April 30th, and they'll be able to forestall it until July 15th without any penalty. They have to be on the STAR program, eligibility-wise. They cannot have their taxes paid by an escrow account, and then they must certify with a legal document under threat of perjury that they have suffered economic loss due to coronavirus. If those factors are in place, there's some slightly different criteria for small businesses and for those who own small rental facilities. They will be able to have the postponement of their taxes up until July 15th. We have worked out an arrangement with the great help of Governor Cuomo that allows us to negotiate with the towns and cities. They can opt in. That process of opting in will start sometime in the middle of the day tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get them all lined up. The forms to be filled out are very simple, very, very easy to do, and not a lot of complication involved. Now, if you do not qualify for the situation for whatever reason, your income is higher than the STAR program allows for, whatever other circumstances there may be, there's an underlying law that has been passed by the Board of Legislators, which I intend to sign when we have our announcement, that will allow a lessening of the standard of penalty. So instead of, for the sake of argument, if you pay your taxes in May, you would normally pay a 2% penalty. That penalty would be down to 0.5%. That exists for all the towns. Cities have their authority to match that if they choose to do that. And we encourage, obviously, as much as possible to have a singular standard across the board. But whether you are not qualified for the program that will extend your taxes due date until July 15th, there is still at least a reduction in late fees that will be possible. And the two programs together represent, we think, a better strategy than the individual discussions beforehand. And we have bipartisan support to do that. We will also work with towns if they are pressed with being able to meet an obligation that they have in remitting 60% of the property taxes to the county. We have now been given the flexibility by the governor to negotiate a number that's less than that. And that will be helpful to the towns and the cities in their cash flow if they are in such a circumstance where they can't meet the 60% threshold. So we're trying to show at our level, county government, town government, village government, city, small city government, that we're working together bipartisanly, trying to come up with some solutions to help the taxpayer. This does not, eliminate you having to pay the taxes. It gives you more time to pay your taxes. And hopefully that time will coincide with the federal government benefit programs coming to pass. We've also indicated that our economic development team is up and operative, trying to be helpful to small businesses to apply for the SBA loans and the PPP program, which has now just been refunded by the federal government. There's additional money now in the pot to draw from. That will probably get sucked up very shortly. But we hope that it'll be there long enough so that Westchester businesses can benefit from it. Bridget Gibbons of our team is working on that. And she will be doing outreach in concert with Volunteer New York, which is a very valuable not-for-profit organization and will be our partner in these things. I'm going to mention again briefly that two of our public golf courses will be open on Saturday and will remain open throughout the course of the weeks. From that point forward, Mohansick Golf Course in Yorktown and Hudson Hills Golf Course in Ossining. We are reopening these two properties. The state policy has changed from what it was a couple of weeks ago. And both of these two facilities, because of their topography and circumstances, we think are ideal to be able to operate with the ability to test our various strategies for social distancing and to make it possible for people to enjoy that particular recreation as they can currently hike, as they can currently bicycle in county parks or walk around, do a little exercise, that this recreation will be reopened to them. Many of the private clubs now are in the process of reopening. And so if they're going to be in operation, we want to make sure that our public courses, which are there for the little guy, that they get that opportunity. And that will start the process this Saturday. We're going to make an assessment into next week, how it goes on Saturday and Sunday. We may have some rain on Sunday, so we don't know if we get the perfect test. We also want to see what the traffic looks like on a weekday with so many people not going to work, and then make some decisions about how we deal with the other four courses and we reserve the right to do whatever we think is in the best interest. But we're trying to make decisions as we can, as practically as we can, given the fact that we don't want to spread the virus, but at the same time, we don't want an unnecessary elimination of something that can be effectively done. And that's what I want to address in the last few minutes of my comments before we take questions. There's a great debate going on in society right now about opening up the society, opening it up so that we can go back to where we were on or about February 15th or March 1st before the various shutdowns have come to pass. First of all, on the legal side of it, Governor Cuomo has issued executive orders. That is the legal basis by which bars, restaurants, gymnasiums, health clubs, barbershops, beauty salons, nail salons, amusement parks, beaches. That is the legal basis by which all of these things are closed. That is subject to change only when the governor determines that he wants to use his executive powers to do that. And of course, he has reached out to many of us in the other levels of government to seek our opinions and have us talk about what is the best policy for reopening the society and what kind of demographics, what kind of numbers do we have to see. As I've mentioned today, it's clear now that we flattened the curve, and I'm hopeful that the slow down tick that we've experienced now over the last week will continue, will be more rapid, and we'll have that many less active cases in Westchester. Westchester is not the Bronx. Westchester is not Nassau or Suffolk. Every place has their own reality. And I think it makes infinitely good sense to make decisions regionally. And that would mean not just New York State, but in concert with New Jersey and Connecticut. And I also buy the argument that different parts of New York State operate in different ways. And something that makes sense in the downstate area, which has borne the brunt of the infection, might be very different in a rural part of Western New York or a rural part of Northern New York, in the Adirondacks or along the southern tier of the state. So I think the governor's idea and plans to move very slowly but very judiciously on these things is a wise decision. He's asked me to serve on a committee along with a number of my other county executive colleagues, and we're going to discuss some of these issues in reimagining New York. But I think the important thing to look at, it applies to any decisions we're making about our parks, any decisions made in society as a whole. Let's start with the obvious, and it may not be obvious to some people. If we could, I would support the full reopening of the society tomorrow. In fact, later today, if we could be sure that we could do that without a significant spread of the virus. This is all about what happens when the virus spreads and how many fatalities come from that spread. We now know that we're approaching the 900 mark of people who have died in Westchester County. And it is important to remember in a very practical way, these people were all alive on March 1st. On March 1st. Go back, think about what you were doing on the first day of March, and understand that at that point, we were just about ready to identify our first COVID patient who has recovered and is back home recuperating. And we had a number of people for which there was scares about somebody who might be exposed to COVID in that mid to late February period of time. But there was not one fatality on March 1st. Even as late as on or about April 1st, the number of fatalities were about 19 or 20 or so people. We're now up to just shy of 900 people who've died. That's a significant number of people. It's a significant number of neighbors and friends. We all now, I think, know people who have expired. I have quite a few friends now that I know have died. And each day brings another name. Tom Lauro, who is head of our DPW here in Westchester County prior to my tenure as county executive. Well respected, much loved in this government of ours. He has died from COVID-related illnesses. And we have friends of ours who lose relatives of theirs. My good friend, Councilman Justin Brash of White Plains just lost his mother to COVID-related situation. We have many folks who fall into that category. The decisions we have to make are either going to be based fundamentally on one or two views of the world. One view of the world says that we have an obligation to all of our fellow residents. And even if this disease is going to take 3 or 4% of lives, which is a small percentage out of the societal whole, out of 100% of the people, 4%, which is a point higher than where we are today, 4% would mean 4 people die out of every 100 people. 96 people live and 4 people die. That our philosophy is to do everything we can to try to prevent those 4 people from dying, whatever's within our capacity. We do not have a vaccine for this disease. We do not have an antiviral for this disease. And I think it is some combination of foolishness and perhaps a criminal cynicism that has us believe that these drugs are right around the corner. To tell people who are desperate to cling to hope that this drug or that drug could be the miracle cure, we're a week away, we're a day away, that's false hope. And it's wrong to offer false hope to people, particularly people who are desperate to see their loved ones live. I remember in the final days of my father's life, how desperate I would be for anything to keep him alive. He died a number of years ago and not related to anything like this. But my love for my father was so great that I would do anything to keep him alive. And to watch him slip away, the strong man who was the absolute authority figure in my life when I was a young boy, to watch him pass away weak and sick in a hospital bed was heartbreaking to watch. And everybody has a story like this. Some people have watched children die. Certainly their spouses or their loved ones die. It is a sobering, awful moment to experience the death of somebody that you love. And 860 some odd people, closing in on 900 people have died just in this county alone. 40,000 nationwide, 40,000 deaths, cutting like a knife through 40,000 families. So one direction, one set of policies is to say, this is something we've never seen before. We're being tested. We're gonna find out, does this nation sacrifice when there is a need to sacrifice? It is a sacrifice of economics. It is a sacrifice of lifestyle. This week, I gave some wishes electronically to young people who are graduating high school. It was 50 years ago this month that I was prepared to graduate from high school. I remember what it was like. I put a remembrance on my Facebook page of the first Earth Day, in which I was rather trivially interested in the environment on that day. But I remember what it was like to have that last 3 or 4 months of my senior year and how much fun it was. And now today's seniors have lost that. We lost the joy of a St. Patrick's Day parade in all of our communities. I'm of Irish descent and Italian descent, and St. Patrick's parades are a great moment of Irish heritage, which we cling to, those of us who share that and those of us who don't. It's a party day, it's a fun day. We had to forgo all of that. Now we're dealing with the fact, I'm a big sports fan, we're dealing with the fact that we haven't seen, and we don't know if we are gonna see the NBA playoffs, the NHL Stanley Cup. I would be fixed to the TV set whenever my day ends to see how those two things end. We'd be in the middle of March Madness and we would have had a national basketball champion by now. And we don't have that. We don't have the Masters golf tournament. Maybe that will be played later in the year and we'll have the pleasure of seeing that. Those things we've sacrificed. We've sacrificed small businesses. There are small business people now that have gone out of business. I know of at least two that cannot make a go of it. Their profit margins were narrow and they've lost their business. People are unemployed. Hopefully the unemployment payments will come through. Hopefully the small business loans or the grants or the PPP program will find their way into the hands of the small business people. We're certainly going to try to help them. This is a sacrifice of a society. It's a sacrifice of our lifestyle. None of us would think of walking out of the house now or our places of business now without a mask on. And that is not part of our culture. I still forget it. You know, once in a blue moon, I forget my car keys, or I might forget my cell phone or my wallet. I said, but now the chances of me forgetting my mask is much higher, so I'm not accustomed to it. And you're not accustomed to it. It's alien to us, but now it's a necessity. Why? Because we have been affected by something that has not happened to this society during our lifetime. And I don't care if you're 15 years old watching this, if you're 35-year-olds watching this, if you're my age, or if you're 30 years older than I am, we have never seen this in our lifetime. This is requiring now us to sacrifice in a way that we didn't. And why? Because 40,000 people are dead, and it could be 60,000 or 80,000 if we don't intelligently sacrifice. And that sacrifice has a real pain to it. The pain to it of economic loss, the pain to it as I try to manage this government that I had hoped I had put on a firm financial footing with some decisions that I made, plans that I had as the chief executive of this county to fix this and to open this and to have joyous ribbon cuttings and feel good about my tenure. Now we're managing fatalities. We get refrigerator trucks to manage dead bodies. That's what this is now. That's the sacrifice. That's one direction. There's another direction out there. Some of the southern states have chief executive officers who have taken on the same authority within their state that Governor Cuomo has and Governor Murphy has and Governor Lamont has in these northeastern states. And those governors have determined that they're going to reopen their states. They have determined that the virus has not affected them the way it has in the New York area. They call it the Chinese virus, and it's affected New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, a couple of big cities, New Orleans, Detroit, maybe a few other places. And they're prepared to reopen the society. And they reopen the bars, and they reopen the restaurants, they reopen the tattoo parlors, and all of the other things that they shut down for a couple of weeks. Sacrifice has been 5 weeks of shutdown, 7 weeks of a changed reality. And even in 5 weeks, businesses go under. Even in 5 weeks, people are unable to sleep at night because they don't know how they're going to pay their obligations. Just like I worry about how are we going to make this county budget fit together. And I'm not alone. Every town supervisor, every city mayor is worrying about those same things. Every councilman, every village trustee is worrying about that. And every small business is worrying about it. A lot of large businesses are worrying about it. We had a conference call yesterday via Zoom with the top developers in Westchester County. These are men and women who have tremendous skills. They understand how to build things of value. And they too know that they're in uncharted waters. And their ability to tackle projects for which there's great financial risk, and then of course potential financial gain, has been affected by this virus like anyone. So in parts of this country, in a couple of states, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia are the ones that come to mind, they've basically said, no, we're going to reopen our society. We can't afford to make the sacrifice financially. We can't afford for these businesses to teeter or totter. We can't afford for the individuals to go on another week. We have churches here, you have churches there in New York, we have churches here, and the pastors want their flock in the churches to celebrate these important events every week. If it were a matter of opinion, their opinion would be no different than ours. It would be one person's opinion, one style of living. We know that there are differences between states, there are differences between regions of the country. People live in the Rocky Mountains in sparsely populated areas. People live in Los Angeles County, 10 million people in one county. They choose to live where they live, and they have that freedom as Americans. I've lived in 3 other states besides New York when my business transferred me there, and I did it for economic reasons. And when given the choice, I came back to New York. But in those states, it's not just opinion. It's not just ideology. It's not just what political party you affiliate with. It's not which TV station you watch at night. There is something objective. And it's called science. And I freely admit, my knowledge of science and medicine, you could put in a thimble. And if you're honest with yourself, you'd make the same statement too. What we know about science and medicine, we could put in a thimble. Many of us, I'll blame my gender, men, we go to the hospital when we get sick, really sick. Most of the time, we're either taught or acculturated to kind of tough it through. You get hurt, don't worry about it, I'll be fine. And if you're still alive, you turned out right. You hurt yourself, but you work through. But science and medicine are objective things. It's the difference between studying math and studying social studies. Social studies is a lot of debate. What were the causes for the Civil War? Debate it. Math, 2 + 2 always equals 4. 8 times 9 is 72. The square root of 16 is 4. Those are absolutes. And there are absolutes in science as well. And not discounting that there are some individuals in the scientific world that say some items that are somewhat different from the total, the vast majority of people who are professionals in the area of communicable diseases tell us when you do not have a vaccine and you do not have an antiviral treatment, you must use the tools of social distancing, testing, and widespread testing. And as proud as I am over our numbers as we approach 80,000 people tested, that's not enough. But nonetheless, you test. When you test and you find positive, you isolate that person. That person is isolated from infecting other people. And if they are part of the 80% or better that muscle through this thing and they come out on the other side, then they can rejoin society in some fashion. But you try to decrease the spread. And baseball fan that I am, if I go sit in seats at Citi Field or Yankee Stadium, I don't know who I'm sitting next to. Society's open. Let's go watch baseball. I want to watch baseball. I want to watch it the way it's meant to be played, outside and as close up and personal as I can afford a ticket. but I don't know who's next to me on the beer line. When I go into the restroom, I don't know who's next to me on that line. And if we've opened up the society, but we haven't tested, how do I know? Now, one or two things happen. I go anyway. They're infected. I'm not. I catch the infection. I come back home from Queens of the Bronx and I spread it around with everybody I see. And if we open back up to society, you know, as county executive, I'm all over this county. And any given day, I meet as many people as anybody does. And I could spread the infection from Pleasantville to Pelham to Pound Ridge to Peekskill. Or I decide, even though it's open, even though the ballparks are open, you know what? I can't go there. I can't run that risk. I can't infect my coworkers, the people I'm going to meet every day. So you've opened the ballpark. Are you going to get 45,000 people to come into town when the Phillies play the Mets, arch rivals, or when the Mets and Yanks have the crosstown series? You're going to have 45,000 people if we haven't really put this thing behind us? I don't think so. And in my prior career, my professional career, I was a marketing sales executive in the hospitality industry. That industry is always affected negatively whenever there's a downturn of any sort in the economy. You are not going to get people to all of a sudden feel comfortable just because you open the society, because business people are saying, we can't afford to go another week without the revenue. But you're not going to get the same revenue because some percentage of people just aren't going to put themselves in the face of contagion. And then what do the scientists also tell us? They tell us, and this is terrible news to think about, that there could be a second wave. That once these numbers go further down that I'm talking about every day, day after day, I'm sure those of you who are watching me have to either be news reporters or junkies to watch me every single day, that the numbers go down and then they're going to go back up. And when they go back up the second time, if it's anything like the Spanish flu of 100 years ago, it was worse in the second wave. Now you ask yourself, are we going to shut the society down for a year? How is that possible? How's that tenable? Well, we don't know. Well, we know one thing. If we reopen it prematurely, we will spread the virus. That's a truth. You can watch whatever TV station you want. You can listen to whatever rhetoric you think is more persuasive to you, but I'm convinced that it's the truth. And when we spread the virus and that number of death of 900 people become 1,900 people, because I gave the order to open up the society, not to open up selectively certain things that are structurally socially distanced. I open up Playland Amusement Park. I open up those pools, and those people go there and they get COVID, and some percentage of them die. All those little kids who go to the pool, they go home and they give COVID to their mom and dad, and worse, to grandma and grandpa die. Whose head is that on? Who made that decision? I would have made that decision. How do you make that decision? Most of us in offices below the presidency don't ever really deal with a life or death decision. If you're president of the United States, you determine that you're going to send military men and women into harm's way. You decide that you're going to send these people to this hot spot of the world, knowing that some percentage of these young people will die. And it was your order that said do it. President Truman made the decision to drop the atom bomb on Japan in hopes of shortening the war and saving lives. But in the act of dropping the atom bomb, many lives were lost. That's a decision that generally only the president of the United States makes, life or death. Now you have a county executive makes the decision, do I open those pools or not? Right now, they can't be open because the governor has an overarching executive order, but pretend the executive order didn't exist. And I'm looking at people saying, hey, Governor of Florida, he's letting people swim in Jacksonville. It's important for the economy. What are you doing? Open those beaches, open those pools. So you've got two philosophies and two strategies. I choose the strategy that says, we will find a way as Americans to come back from this economic disaster. And it is a disaster. There is not a drop that underestimates how hideous a disaster of economy that we face now. As far as I can see, we have now started on the second great American Depression. My mom and dad of blessed memory are imagining now that their son has lived long enough to see what they saw, a depression. That's what we could well be on the cusp of. You want to talk straight? Let's talk straight. On the other hand, a pandemic that kills thousands of people, there's no coming back from death. There's coming back from economic difficulty. There are people who are unemployed who can be reemployed. There are businesses that, having been shuttered, can be reopened. But when death comes, it comes with finality. And if that death total doubles or triples because of decisions we've made, then we have to live with that forever. There's nothing that any public official would like to have more than at the time of an election for things to be going well. The economy is strong, people are happy, they have money in their pocket, they feel good. That gives you the best possible chance to be successful on election day. What do you risk when you do that? What do you risk? You risk lives. You risk lives of people that are never coming back. And I've been through a lot of elections in my time. And the one thing that I know is an election is not forever. The office that I sit in right behind us here is my office, if I live, until the end of the 4th year. And if it so happens that I have additional time in that office by the will of the people, if I so choose, then I might have it a little bit longer. But if I have any kind of a reasonable lifespan, the day will come when I don't hold this position, when I sit outside in the reception area down the hallway, and I have to wait for permission by whoever the county executive of that day is to allow me to come into an office that for right now is mine, but it's only temporarily mine. But if I make the wrong decisions, the deaths are permanent. The deaths are permanent. That little child that doesn't even know that they're bringing COVID into their home and inadvertently infects grandma, and grandma at age 74 might have lived to be 84 or 90 and had the joy of seeing that little child grow up, but they die because of COVID. Why? Because I said it was okay to go to the pool. We're open. Let's open it up. We each have to decide where we stand. That's where I stand. If my strategies are wrong and my policies are wrong, then the voters will tell me in very short order. I think I'm doing the right thing. I hope I'm doing the right thing. I'm erring on the side of caution. I'm erring on the side of protecting lives. You'll never know the lives that you saved because you didn't lose them. But I think that's where we have to err. That's where I cast my belief. That's where we cast our public policy. And for those people that fear what might happen through an economic cataclysm, I fear the same things, but I will work every day that I'm in this particular job to help offset that to the best of my ability. And I just hope that we'll have as many people alive to help me work through that and not have that death toll rise up. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, I can show you the refrigerator truck that's just waiting to take on more bodies. It's waiting for us if we make the wrong choices. With that, I'll open it up to the press. We have press folks here. Catherine Chaffee, off camera. I'll take whatever questions that are coming.
Sure. So we have one question from the patch. The governor says the state is now investigating nursing homes over their responses to the pandemic. What's the county government's relationship with nursing homes in the county? And is your office getting complaints? And what were you able to do about those complaints?
Well, the county has no regulatory authority over nursing homes. We could not send a county health department team in on our own initiative to go in to inspect policies or procedures. That's outside of our authority. Our sole direct contact with nursing homes right now is because we are to try to supply them with PPEs, personal protection equipment, protective equipment, and hand sanitizers. And we collate their requests and satisfy them and return it to them. There are many of the nursing home managers, executives that I know, I consider colleagues and friends. We've discussed issues with them. But we don't have any direct control over this. We are happy to have our health department, which is already overtaxed, to help the State Department in an ongoing review of what's happening inside those nursing homes. But this should not be a surprise to anybody. The first deaths to COVID came in Kirkland, Washington, inside a nursing home. Those deaths occurred well over a month ago. So this is not a shock. The state and rightfully so, issued an order on that first weekend of March, the 7th, 8th, I believe it was, that said no outside visitors into a nursing home, which means you can't go see mom and dad or Uncle Joe in the nursing home. And so now I think that if the state is going to be doing systematic checks at all times, that's a positive thing. I think the vast majority of nursing home managers are overwhelmed by what's happened to them in the same way that our funeral directors are overwhelmed by the number of deaths. You talk to a funeral director and they say, I don't know what to do. We get 1 or 2 or 3 deaths in a short period of time. Now we have 15 or 20. We can't get space to bury people at the cemetery, and we can't have a wake. What do we do? And that is yet one more example of what happens when this situation happens. So we will work with the state in however they see fit to follow up systematically on the nursing homes, to provide whatever assistance we can provide to them. Certainly, we're prioritizing the PPEs, and we're trying to handle the fatality management element of all of this. It is a matter, though, of the state regulatory authority.
Okay, that's the one question that we have for today.
Only question. All right, very good. Took a little more time than I do. I'm trying to keep these for half an hour, and I appreciate those of you who are watching now who might watch this on tape. And of course, today we touched on some of the key numbers and some of the key issues, but I also wanted to share my thoughts about the reopening. I'm pleased to be on the governor's task force, and I will try to bring as much ability and as much information as I can to the discussions ahead. We do need to reopen the society. We need to do it intelligently in concert with science, and we need to do it, I think, in phased levels based on what things can open that can be properly socially distanced, and start the process and do it intelligently and in a very deliberate fashion. But we'll see how that happens. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching. This being Thursday, tomorrow, we will be back for an 11 a.m. Facebook Live interview. And we'll be back again at 2 o'clock for another update before we take a break over the weekend from these updated reports. In the meantime, we'll be busy over the next few days, and hopefully we'll continue to see the trend lines going in the right direction. Thank you for watching. Be safe.